Today on Low Luck Garage, something just a little bit different from all my shit boxes. We are doing an exhaust on a FG Falcon. This is just a bolt-on exhaust replacement. Oh, obviously a performance bolt-on exhaust. So it's 2.5 inch. We will be fitting some Pacemaker 4490s, the Black Ops middle and rear section, so both the mufflers and some nice chrome tips, and a OEX supplied high flow cat and pipe work. So this all just bolts in, no fabrication required. Let's get started. Right, so this is what we're going to be working with today. Pacemakers, 4490s. I believe that's an OEX high flow cat and pipe. Got the gasket and this Black Ops, I guess you'd call it a catback. Let's call it a catback. Some nice shiny tips on it. Welding looks pretty good for a bolt-on exhaust anyway. I'm going to start up here, get these bolts off for the cover that cover the manifold, get some something on there to penetrate the rust, and get the manifold off first, and we'll take it up, get the bolts underneath, and then pull the rest of the exhaust off. Alright, so a couple of minutes in, probably got the heat shield off, oxygen sensor. Like I said, I gave it a little bit of a lube. Usually these are a bit rusty. This one's just come out. It's a 22mm spanner. Get that out. Some brand spanners will fit over the end of this, so you can use a ring end, but one doesn't. I'm just going to remove all the header bolts, except for two. We'll leave that one there, and we'll put one back up in here. So it's just sitting on there, so when we go underneath, we can rattle gun those bolts out, and they'll just fall down. And we can come back up and pull the manifold off, and it doesn't fall down and land in the engine bay. All right, so probably about 10 minutes in, we've undone the two bottom bolts there on the manifold that hold the flange to the exhaust. Cat's hanging down. Got another oxygen sensor here, 22mm, same as the one at the front. We'll keep this on for now. It'll help support this, especially since if you're doing it by yourself. So we've got these two bolts, the oxygen sensor, we'll get the cat out. Front section's out. We should only take 5 minutes. So we're about 15 minutes in. Probably going to keep this bracket on here to hold the rest of the exhaust up. That's what I normally do. I did have some problems with one of these bolts, so keep that in mind, that especially the ones here in this position where most of the water sits are going to be pretty rusty. These ones are usually okay, but we'll see if they hold this up or not. But that's our next stop, these two here. We'll leave that in there, like I said, that metal bracket, because it'll hold it up. Well, those two came out no problem. The rest of the exhaust came out. Rubber at the back here hiding up above the muffler. Two rubbers here. And that was the hanger for the pipe we just took off at first. We're actually ready to get our new exhaust in. We'll start from the back, work forward. The Black Ops exhaust came with these gaskets, some fasteners. Now you probably don't have to put a bit of sealant on these if you don't want, but I'm just going to put a little bit of heat sealant on this. Alright, I like to use the JB Weld brand. It's a high temp RTV silicone. We're just going to apply that to the gasket. Don't go crazy. So we've got a gasket stuck down on that center part, and the bolt's just hanging through on that part, the tail part. Okay, so I just rested that part again on that bracket, and then just lined it up with the bolt holes. slip the hanger back on and put the nuts on. We're going to leave that loose, not all the way loose, just a little bit loose. Do it up with your fingers because we're going to need the movement up here because we're up to this part. So we're going to put the cat section in. Got the driveway maybe. Nice. Anyway, we're going to put the cat section in. Right, so the center section's up there. Again, a little bit of sealant. This center section, this cat, I should say, came with gaskets and bolts as well. Front and rear. So again, we're just going to leave it all loose. Leave those loose. Leave that loose. We're going to go up. We're going to put these headers on. All right, so we're up here, ready to put the extractors on. I always give that a little bit of a clean, just a wide brush to get all that corrosion stuff off it. If you can get a new factory gasket, that's probably your best bet, but the ones supplied, or the one that's been supplied with this job, or the ones that you can buy, they'll do the job. You can buy off eBay, wherever. So extractors are going to be, I'm not sure if they're going to go in. We'll find out in a sec. Some have to take the steering shaft off, but we'll give it a shot. All right, there we go. Pacemakers are in. No scratches or anything. Just straight in, pretty much. Have to move the heater hose out of the way, but that's it. So now that that's in, you can get your gasket on, prepped, and remember to use the bolts that came with the extractors, or if your extractors didn't have bolts, you're going to have to find some, because the manifold bolts are obviously a little bit longer because the manifold's thicker, being cast metal. So just keep that in mind. But this was supplied with bolts, so we'll go ahead and fit them up. Just going to put again a little bit of sealant on there just to hold everything in the right spot and to seal it up a little bit, and run the bolts in. All right, we've used a little bit of the high temperature RTV to keep the gasket in the right spot. Now I'll lift up the headers, extractors, and put the bolts in. All right, we've got one at the front, one at the back. That sits nice and straight. We'll get to work putting these in by hand to start them off. Okay, so all the bolts are accessible except for two. This one down here, this one here. I mean accessible with a extension bar and a socket. So these two, just use a trusty ratchet spanner. So the pacemaker header, I might mention as well, is slotted at the bottom. So that means that you can put the bottom row of bolts in, or put the gasket on, put the bottom row of bolts in, and then just lower the header down onto the bolts, which makes it easier, but I just like to do it that way. It's quicker. I don't have to worry about trying to lift them up to put the bolts in. Once these are in and tightened up, there's no play, not as much play in those holes, and the others just all just go in. So you can do it either way. It says in the instructions, if anybody ever reads them, is that this needs to be tied out of the way. You see, it's could possibly touch the extractors there and melt. So I think we'll use some zip ties and pull it out of the way. But anyway, we're back under the car after that, and you can see down there that the oxy sensor is accessible under the car now, not up here. So the oxy sensor will have to be put in from under the car, unless you've got really long arms, I guess. So I'll tie that up out of the way, and then that's it for up here. Okay, back under here, I've rerouted the oxygen sensor. I took it off the block, let it sit between the transmission tunnel and the bell housing, and then used a zip tie, made sure it wasn't touching anything so it doesn't rattle. Rerouted around the transmission cooler lines here, just so it's a bit further away from that mess of heater pipes and the extractors themselves, because there'll be a bit more heat there now. And we're up to the part of just going through and bolting this back together. Both the oxy sensors are in. This one over here as well, tightened up. Got that pretty straight. Looks nice, sort of centered. What I had to do was, as I mentioned before, leaving these bolts loose. Don't go crazy doing them up, even the front one at the header, because it's going to allow it to tilt, line that tailpipe up. So once I had the tailpipe lined up in the right spot, I came back and tightened all these up. Just kept going back and checking that it was straight. The muffler's sitting nice and flat. That's the result. So that's all bolted in, all our oxy sensors are in. When I go up to the headers, give them a bit of a quick wipe down. Some some soap and a sponge just to get the hand marks off so it doesn't stain straight away. That's what I came up with, just to keep that off there. Obviously you don't want to go too gung-ho because you don't want to break any of that. That's a plastic T-junction there. So I just went off the rake line just to there, put another zip tie in there just to hold it, put it above the clamp so that it doesn't move around. I think that's what they meant. Anyway, that's done. We're talking 45 minutes to an hour max, I reckon. It's including any rusted bolts or any other little issues you have. Obviously if you snap a manifold bolt off in the head, it might be a different story, but if it goes, you know, fairly normal, fairly smooth from experience. This did probably 45 to an hour for most people, I think, maybe longer if you do it on the ground. The steering did not have to come out, even though it does say it in the instructions, but that might be just generic for, say, Pacemaker comps or something like that. Don't over tension those bolts. You can always come back and re-tension them, but if you over tension them and destroy a thread, not fun times ahead for you. So let's kind of wrap up the exhaust installation. The muffler and tailpipe, I guess we'll take it for a drive, see what it sounds like. Done a few of these in my time, including some custom ones, lots of B series stuff. So we'll take it out, see what it sounds like. Let those extractors do their thing, get nice and hot. It is windy as out here, it's crazy. I'm sitting in the car and it's on the side of the road, it's just blowing the car around. So we can't do a video of the outside because it's just going to sound distorted. But anyway, that's gonna do it for the FG exhaust install video. The pacemakers, full 490s, just slip straight in, no problems there. The OEX supplied cat and pipe just bolted straight up to, straight to the headers, nice clearance. And then we had that center section and rear section from the Black Ops Performance. That, it went into. I had to muck around a little bit to get the tailpipes to center. That's fairly normal. That's why I said leave all the bolts loose. But I did have to, because I was doing it on my own, I did have to jam a bit of wood, soft pine up in the back there to keep the exhaust centered. So it wasn't on the muffler or anything. And I'll double check that after I've taken it on this test drive, after it's had a couple of heat cycles. But yeah, it was all good. Everything worked out fine. If you're after a standard exhaust replacement that bolts on, you can do it at home, or you can take to an exhaust shop or get done in an exhaust shop. That's probably not going to take all day. That's probably a good one. So until the next one, remember, dreaming ain't just for dreamers, and subscribe if you can, if you want to. If you like this sort of stuff, I'll try and do some more of it in the future.